And with that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Merge Medical Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Brown. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Jeff Cole, and a very, very special guest that I'm super excited to have here today, Dr. Harvey Castro. Dr. Castro is a AI expert and author of multiple books, including Apple Vision, Healthcare Pioneers, Chat GPT in Healthcare, Revolutionize Your Health and Fitness with Chat GPTs, and his newest book, Chat GPT in Healthcare, Unlocking the Potential of Patient Empowerment. He's obviously a keynote speaker. He's a physician himself. We're delighted to have him. He was difficult to book because he's so busy, so popular, and so important. Dr. Castro, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is exciting. Nice to meet other fellow physicians. So thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. And Dr. Castro, we don't know much about you other than you are an AI expert and you're a doctor. I don't even know what kind of doctor you are. So you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. So I'm a ER board certified doctor with about 20 years experience. A little bit about me. Basically, I call myself a little bit like a nutty professor in that I've enjoyed doing a lot of crazy stuff in healthcare. Just from starters, I had my own vitamin company when I was in residency. I developed my own formulation, got a cardiologist to give his blessings, got a national distributor and labeled it, and then put it out there and went national with it. It was a lot of fun. I've always been this kind of doctor that if I see something that bothers me or something that's a pain point, I just go for it. And so fast forward, playing with the first iPhone in the emergency room. I'm literally coding the first a patient and a nurse. I told her, hey, let's start this IV drip. And she's like, 1 second, doc. Went and got a textbook, started thumbing through it, verifying the dose, got a calculator. And I'm looking at her thinking, and I'm looking at the first iPhone, mind you,
right,
thinking, we should make an app for this.
We should make an app for this.
Yeah.
And so I literally taught myself how to program. I started doing my own calculations for IV drips. I ran it by a pharmacist, made it like an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Long story short, I created the first IV meds app in the world back then. It went viral, went crazy. It sold everywhere.
Right.
And then fast forward, I'm literally in the ER, and I'm thinking, man, there's like all these things that are pain points, like the NIH scale for strokes and, like even getting credentials. So I was like, I'm just going to start making apps. And so I did about 40 apps at that time and we're selling them. It's just a lot of fun just to be able to do stuff. So the other thing, my claim to fame is working in the emergency room and not really happy because the administration just kept pushing me like, hey, you need to move faster. And I'm like, I'm right there with the guys. In fact, if anything, I think I'm ahead of them as far as seeing patients. And they're like, no, but we know you can see patients even faster. And I'm like, so I kind of got pissed off and I said, you know what, I'm in Dallas, Texas. And at the time, it was a thing that you can create your own freestanding ER. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go into this thing called freestanding ERs. And all my colleagues are like, dude, you're crazy. Like once you leave, you're not going to be able to come back. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. So I had ownership in the ER group that I was in. And I said, here are your shares. I think it's best. I'm going to just start making these. And so I did about probably like 12 for other people. And then I thought, all right, it's time for me to do my own. So I created about 8 emergency rooms. One of them was a micro hospital. We had about 350 employees, had my own billing company, staffing company. And I thought, okay, now bundled it, sold it. And then the last quick pain point, there's this thing called Chat GPT. It was November 2022.
Yeah.
And I'm playing with it and thinking, oh my God, this is going to change medicine. This is going to be huge.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was in this office, tell my wife, and she's like, Chat who? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I was explaining to her, she started chuckling. She's like, no one's going to take you serious. Nobody knows what the hell you're talking about. You're going to write this book and no one's going to read it. She's like, I would not go down that route. And I was like, So I actually like started writing it and I was like, maybe she's right. I actually left the book alone for about a week. And then I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to publish it. So then I published the book 3 weeks later.
Are you your own publisher or how did you do that?
Yeah, I started thinking it through and I thought the best way is if I submit it to a book company, it's going to take 6 months to a year. And by then, God knows what's going to happen. And so I told myself I need to self-publish this one because just because of that fact. what was funny is I'm really bad with labels. One of the other companies came up with their own AI book in healthcare. It came out May of 2023. I was about 6 months ahead of them, but they had access to ChatGPT 3 and 4 a whole year and a half before I did. And I still beat them to the punch because they went through the traditional publisher and approval process. So, it goes to show you, yes, it's nice to go through a publisher, but sometimes some things, especially, technology, if you're talking about it and putting it on a book, by the time you put it out there, it may be already, the next edition may be out of the product.
Does anyone but me find it ironic that someone publishing a book about ChatGPT would use a traditional publisher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, shouldn't
Yeah, it's a good point.
sort of replace an editor, publisher, etc.? Yeah.
I've
Harvey,
never looked for this answer, but GBT, what does that stand for? I mean, maybe I should know that, or does it have a meaning?
Oh, it does, and I should know better. It's generative something transformation. Now I'm gonna Google it because I should know this from heart by now. It's funny because I haven't been using it. It says generative pre-training. That's it. Transformation or transformer. Because it's generative, it's generating, and then it's already been pre-trained with data, and then it's transforming those words. And that's kind of how they're getting away around the New York Times lawsuit, because they're saying we didn't copy word for word. We're using fair use case information that was already out there, and we're just being able to do it. So we'll see. This lawsuit's going to be a big deal for this kind of information, because depending how what judgment is created will determine the industry in many ways. So we'll see.
I don't think they're stopping it, and I could tell already this could be a 10-part podcast series with everything you just said. I'm sure there's way more to you than that 5-minute opener, but there's a lot to unpack. So I'm an anesthesiologist. I guarantee you I downloaded one or more of your apps if it had to do with ICU drips, etc.
Oh yeah,
quite handy. That's fantastic. Well, I know if you're plugged into the internet or anywhere in the world, you can't help hearing about AI, right? I mean, it's at the forefront of everything, and there's no doubt that it's going to be, it's going to be as big as the internet, right? Or bigger. And then it's going to change not just healthcare, but everything really. And I think I'd like to hear since you're the expert in this, since the podcast is geared towards physicians and allied healthcare professionals, what do you see the next 5 years looking like? What do you see the next 10 years looking like? And then more importantly, what would you say to an aspiring pre-medical student right now about the future of their career choice and their specialty?
Yeah. Hopefully I can remember all that, but
I'll remind you because I want to know.
Okay. The next 5 to 10 years is going to be what I call the great shift. We're going to see a period of time where, yes, we're all in our box. Anesthesiologist, ER doctor, we all do our functions, but I call it the great shift because depending on how this AI transforms our particular vertical, we're going to start working differently, and we're going to have to shift the way we do things. For example, I'll use myself. I'm an ER doctor. Obviously, I'm working 24/7, so I could be working days, nights. I may have to shift my body. And as a human being, my body is only going to be so good, at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, unless I'm a night owl. And so having AI to use it as an augmented tool, I always stress over and over to all my fellow physicians and professionals out there that it's AI plus human is better than just AI alone or just human alone. Because as my example, 2 a.m, I'm tired, I'm looking at a patient, I'm like, muscle memory, here's my differential diagnosis. But if I have a tool, let's not say it's ChatGPT, but say another type of AI that I can plug in all the symptoms and some of the lab results, again, for respecting HIPAA, not breaking any rules, and for it to come back and say, hey, you may have forgotten this, go back, check the belly, hey, go back, look at the ears, do this or that. Where we're moving forward, it's going to be common where a lot of people don't know this kind of stuff, but like the camera we're using right now, I can rig this up where I can know exactly how old you guys are. Based on your voice and an algorithm, I can tell what your hemoglobin A1C is right now.
You can tell my hemoglobin A1C from this camera in my computer?
Yes. Yeah. There's an algorithm that I can take, and I'll be pretty close to what your hemoglobin A1C is just with this camera.
Can you demonstrate that right now, or is that something you got to set up?
I would have to have the algorithm on me, and then maybe I should load it on my computer. I can start messing with people and telling them.
That's crazy. No, I don't think very few people would be aware of that.
Yeah. Another thing, some stuff, it's kind of variable, but I can get a ballpark blood pressure, and then your age. I can see what your age is based on the camera again. And then other things that are kind of people that don't really know, our voice can also determine the hemoglobin A1C or the camera, just with the camera. Either one of those can do it. The other is based on my voice. You're like, oh yeah, I can tell he's depressed or not. But you can actually start predicting like early Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, other diseases just with our voice. And so what I'm getting at is all of these tools will be common when we're in 5 years from now. It'll be like, here's another quick example. There's a lot of nurses out there that our healthcare population professionals are burnt out. They're done. They want to retire. And so we have a huge strain. By the year 2050, the population is going to invert, where there's going to be more older people than younger people being born. And so we're going to have a huge issue as far as healthcare. I mean, we hear stories in the ER, people dying all the time. It's going to be worse. And we need something. And that something to me is going to be AI. And I know I made that long-winded point, but this is kind of the drive home point to your question. 5 years from now, I have no doubt that we're going to have a robot. And that robot, their eyes of the robot, is going to be what we're talking about, ChatGPT 4. By then, it'll probably be like, who knows, maybe ChatGPT 10. But all those things that I just gave you an example, the voice, looking at you, will be in the eyes of the robot. And so fast forward, I have the robot next to me, and I can literally see Miss Jones here and know what her hemoglobin A1C, her blood pressure, have all these parameters. In fact, the vision of just the patient walking in, I can see if they have any issues with their gait, if it's their hip. There's just all these analytics. And then fast forward, I'm really into the future. I got my little prop right here. You got this bad boy, which is the Apple Vision Pro. And this will be common, and it won't look like this big clunky thing. In fact, it'll look more like these Meta glasses that I have. And it will have a screen right here that I can see. And if you're in Epic, it'll plug into Epic. And then I'd be able to see all your labs in real time. I'll be able to look through and use the vision to get your blood pressure and all the things that I saw. I would have it here, but I also would have it in the robot.
100%.
In fact,
I hope AI gets rid of Epic. No offense.
I think I need some cash, but we can do it.
Well, let me ask you some more specifics about what you just said. So, to me, a lot of that seems like that's like 5 years is basically right now. So, I'm not trying to be a naysayer or doomsday advocate, but I can see a future where and I know we need help. Doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, we're so short, we're so overworked. We would welcome the assistance, but I could see a very near future, maybe not for my age group, but for the next kids coming up, where if you're not a doctor that's a proceduralist that does things like a surgeon or an anesthesiologist or an ER doctor, if you're a doctor that just thinks, where the need for you becomes diminishingly smaller in quite a quick fashion. And how do you speak to that? Because I hear you say, yeah, doctor plus AI, but I could easily see a future where a nurse practitioner has an AI assistant, and maybe a physician's involved at 1,000 patient care level, which to me even seems achievable within a decade, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I call it, again, the great shift. And you just gave a great example. It could be a nurse practitioner with a robot, and then to verify you have a doctor. I think in healthcare, personally, I could be wrong, I think we always will need a human in the loop. No matter how advanced we get, it's going to be really rough to convince a patient, be like, yeah, go into room 2 and there'll be a robot there and they'll get your tonsils taken out and I'll see you in a minute. That's gonna be hard. Maybe not our generation, maybe not the next couple, maybe eventually it'll get to something like that. But the other thing to this is nothing's 100%. Even AI is going to hiccup, make a hallucination, do something. And for that 1%, even if it's minute, maybe it's just one time in a whole year that the doctor's ever really made a difference, but the doctor's still present. And so my point is, going back to my statement of the great shift, it's going to be us changing our workflows, how we do things. I'll use this bad example. If I'm a family practice doctor in the middle of Podunk, USA, and there's not many specialists, well, now if I don't have AI, I'm shipping everybody to the big city. Hey, you need to go to the city, you need to go see that specialist. But if I have AI and I can augment, and now with the vision and say, oh, that's a dermatology disease, the AI read it, it's telling me it's this, and that. Now I can do stuff as a dermatologist that I probably wouldn't, as a family practice that's into the dermatology space, that I don't have to send to the big city, that I can actually take care of because the algorithms are helping me and it's making me a better physician. And so that's why I call it the great shift, because now I'm going to start doing things different. Now on the dermatology side, they may not be seeing a certain percentage of patients that they're like, yeah, I wish they hadn't sent this to me. Now that goes away. Now maybe they're doing more procedural stuff. And so that's why I really think it's just going to be a big shift in workflow. Now, to your point, will people lose jobs? I pause and say yes and no. Sounds political. Yes, they will, but I think it's just about being retrained. Case in point, we got all these future medical students that are being scribes for us in healthcare. I don't see a future for them in the sense that that job is going to be gone. I mean, this conversation that we have, I can easily transcribe. In fact, my business partner and I are working on a cool tool that, let's say this conversation will be transcribed. We'll make general points. And then we're working on a system that it automatically will send you an email with the transcription, with the key points, with summary statements, and it'll be simple. So why not do the same thing for our patients? There's just no need. And to your point, if you want to take Epic out, doing these kind of things it's what's gonna make that user friendly, make it much faster, better, where physicians like you and I would be like, yeah, I want this over Epic.
I think, well, and I say that half jokingly, but also seriously, I watched physicians retire when Epic was implemented. And I don't think any of us mind using an EMR. And not to pick on Epic, but then none of them work great, right? Epic probably actually works better than most, but it's a source of frustration for many of us. And I think almost everyone would agree that it doesn't help patient care yet, right? So I didn't want to leave we did leave one stone unturned. Talking about the scribe reminded me, what do you tell your kids if they say, hey, Dad, I want to be a doc, or the scribe that's in medical school now? Hey, I'm thinking about specialties. Let's even say, hey, I'm worried about AI and how that's going to affect the job. Yeah, it sounds like everything's going to get pushed more procedurally. What do you tell those kids? What do you tell that generation that's worried about spending $250,000, $300,000 on an education coming up, right?
Big picture, I am struggling personally with this for my kids. I see this as, do I want them to drop $300K, for XYZ, well knowing that a lot of this AI stuff that I'm seeing daily can replace those jobs or can take those tasks away. So I've become more of a teacher to my children of AI and telling them, hey, this tool came out, this is what's going on, and teaching them how to use these tools, because at the end of the day, it's all about how we train our brain and how we can find information and knowledge, and using that human factor, which is our creativity, and combining it with access to information. And so that's literally what I'm doing with my kids. I'm teaching them the different types of AI, what's out there. I'm giving them examples. I'm giving them examples in their world so that they get it. Because I think that's going to be the best tools that I can give them. And I'm encouraging them to really think outside the box and create a new world, in that I don't want them to follow a cookbook and say, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be this, because whatever that is may not exist.
Well, there may be one example right in front of us, Jeff Brown, if you think back in anesthesia, was there a time when there was a doctor in every OR? Well, I
Right.
guess the point I'm trying to make is now that the standard is you may have one doctor overseeing 4 rooms, 5 rooms,
Multiple CRNAs. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do you have primary care offices that work in a similar fashion, where you have one physician maybe overseeing a larger army of APPs?
I think it'll make it easier to do that. That's for sure. I think anesthesia kind of stands out in the sense that it's a specialty that does things, and a lot of people don't understand. But we do things with our hands, and people just think, oh, well, you put them to sleep, But putting in a breathing tube, putting in central lines, putting in IVs, doing blocks, those are all things that require more than thought, and are not going to be easily replaced by a robot. As opposed to, and that's why I asked the question at the beginning of the conversation, those doctors that are, I guess you call them the ology doctors, the doctors that think, that the internal medicine doctors that don't really cut malignancies out or put screws into broken bones, etc. Right? Those are the ones that are at most threat for at least the most disruptive part of their practice. If it's not going to eliminate it, it will change it big time, right?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I've read a lot of books, and a lot of them kind of say the same thing. You're better off as a hairdresser than some professions, because the hairdresser is going to always have a job.
Right.
Because some of the tools, what does a hairdresser make versus other professions? If you're having to cut costs, and you can say a robot gets down to 50K, but they don't get any health benefits and 401K,
Yeah.
then
Well,
it's kind of worth the investment if they can do that job.
but it's ironic. Okay, I want to back up, and I saw a video from, say, the 50s, late 40s, and it was sort of predicting like what today would look like. And a couple of things were right, but a lot was so wrong, right? So maybe we don't really know what it's going to look like. I mean, I think I can have an idea. And when I look around, I think, gosh, these guys that are doing HVAC and plumbing and electric, they're good. But if you're an accountant, right? If you're a doctor that thinks, or you're some type of white collar is what's threatened the most, when we all thought, yeah, robots or technology is going to replace the jobs that humans don't want to do, like being a garbage man. No, still need a garbage man. They got a big lever to help pick it up, but is it coming?
And this is the ER crazy doc in me that's going to say this. We're in a field that legislation and society is not going to allow things. And so when I give my talk around the world, I literally say, we will start seeing advancements in healthcare in other parts of the world outside of the US before we see it in the US, because risk versus benefits, politics. And I strongly think there's such a strong lobbyist group and politics in our field that I don't foresee a legislator allowing a lot of this to happen. They're going to always make her human. So at least in our immediate lifetime or work lifetime, I don't see that coming personally. The only way I see it coming is if an insurance company can come around and say, look, this is cheaper, and then the doctors are just going to have to take a haircut on this price.
I see. That's a very good point. Sort of like the third world countries, they didn't have telephone lines, but now everybody's got cell phones. They sort of just skipped the landline phase and went straight to so maybe we'll see robot doctors in Africa.
Exactly.
Before we'll see them. Man, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
It makes
I'll give you
sense.
I'll give you an example. Trust me, I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff all the time. So that's why. Case in point, and I love that you said Africa, because that's the example I give. If you ran a country in Africa and you knew that a segment of your population had zero healthcare.
Yeah, what's the downside?
What if this thing hallucinates, but it saves? It's a different game. But here's the thing: the way this is the structure I'm telling individuals from Africa when they get a hold of me. This is the advice I tell them. I say, tell your people that are running your country to set up these mobile stations that allow the locals to go into, say, a truck full of computers, talk to Elon Musk to get free internet, so
Mhm.
that the satellites are out there in your middle of nowhere, you are having access to internet.
Mhm.
And then have the open AIs, the big dogs, to give you free access to your APIs,
Mhm.
and to make sure that we have a human in the loop and we're not like killing people or letting this thing go by itself. Let's have a doctor, that one doctor might be responsible for 50 patients for that truck, but let's have someone there to verify, or let's have a bunch of PAs and a doctor, and let's set up a team. But if you set up a team of a doctor and a PA, and you can take care of a village,
Mhm.
with all of that and efficiency and do a good job, then I think you are giving them good health care compared to nothing.
Plus, I think all of this is going to change slowly enough to adapt. It's not going to put anybody out of work now or 5 years from now. I don't think.
No.
I think it's going to influence. I think you'll be able to balance the population shift with just where med schools are. How many people are we admitting? Do we need to admit more? Do we need to admit less? You know,
Yeah.
the nurse practitioners. Will they adjust
Now
their numbers?
let's go into we kind of talked about the 5-10 year plan ish. Let's talk about the education, was the last part he mentioned. You and I, just by looking at the cameras, we're all around the same age, and as we probably think similar, we probably study similarly. But if you look at the new med students now, they're learning differently. They're using VR, they're using MP3s, they're using technology way different the way we do.
Mhm.
So one of my advice to these individuals is keep going, keep learning, but now make sure it's AI in your practice. In fact, medical schools, I know there's only like 5 in the country right now, are teaching AI. And so they need to teach AI, just like I'm going to date myself back when I went through med school. They had this thing called interactive learning, and that's the way they do it now. But it was all problem-based learning. I didn't go through the traditional way of learning. And so that whole approach of, when I'm learning a case, they need to throw AI and how AI could influence that case and integrate it into the curriculum, so that when that medical student comes out, they come out with some kind of like informatics degree with AI / an MD, so that they really understand. Case in point, I've been studying this stuff, and a lot of people don't realize that if they use an AI, it changes. That data actually drifts. That reinforced learning, what's good today, literally tomorrow cannot work for our patients. And if the administration is taking in these tools and don't realize that these AI tools literally will change as they're using them, then they're going to not be practicing the right way. They won't even know how to check these things. So having clinicians that are in the field taking care of our patients, they need to know what I call the good, the bad, and the unknown. That's literally what I've been doing all year. Is I go around the world giving a talk about what's good, the bad, and kind of unknown stuff, like we just talked about Africa.
Well, let's look. Let me ask you, because I'm excited about this. I think Jeff's a computer geek like me, and obviously this is your wheelhouse. How do we as a society and as a world ensure the fidelity of what's coming and the integrity of it? We've all seen Terminator, right? We've all watched 2001 and how locks the cabin and kills everybody.
Yeah.
And now, like, even today, you can't get Gemini to make anybody unless they're black. Even Brad Pitt's black. So how do I ensure? And I've even heard Sam Altman say, yeah, this is going to kill people. It's going to save people too. But you hear that it's obviously something this powerful, something this ubiquitous. How do we go forward as a physician society, as a people, to ensure that this is making correct diagnoses and doing the right things? It's such a big question, I know, but that's something I'm always thinking about, and you're the guy to ask.
And I think add on to that is, the concept of garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly.
The data. How do you know what's correct, what's safe? What are the safeguards there?
I love this. I had to think of it. Here's the skinny. We need our own AI. Case in point, ChatGPT was never created for healthcare, even though I have a whole book called ChatGPT and Healthcare. Some people don't know this, but when ChatGPT was trained, they had people in Africa getting paid less than $1 an hour to do what's called reinforced learning. So when it gave an output, a human being be like, yeah, that sounds good, thumbs up. Oh, that one sounds bad. But those people were not doctors. And so they're giving advice and reinforcing stuff that they don't really know. And so my point is, we need, as a society of healthcare professionals to create our own large language model,
A medical,
but not
yeah.
but not just call it the medical. If I'm an ER doctor, I need to make a large language model that is focused on ER. And if you, my friend Jeff, call me like, hey, Harvey, help me out with my anesthesiology LLM, my answer should be like, no, unless I'm intubating or something that's in my box. Because if I'm reinforcing your model, there might be stuff that I may jack up. There might be stuff that I think is right, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is we need our own large language model reinforced with our own data, the right people, and using the right sources. And then quick, I know you were about to say something, but 2 quick examples are we have Hippocratic AI, and then we have Glass Health, and they're starting to do these kind of things that we're talking about, and we need more of it.
What's it called? Hippocratic AI?
So Hippocratic AI, about a year ago, got about $55 million. I heard they got another 100 this year-ish. And what they created is a large language model. Now, I don't know what they're using, but again, it's data, garbage in, garbage out. So whatever data they got, they're saying that they're taking the logs of nurses and patients when they're doing pre-op and certain nurse tasks. And they said they had, millions of hours, and they were able to transcribe it. And what they created is it's supposed to launch next December. And so what it is basically is imagine where you're speaking to a nurse. Now you just call the robot, and then the AI robot is able to ask the whole questions like, how you doing? How was the surgery? What's going on? So it's doing all of those things. And I think they're charging $9 an hour for that service. And so this is an example where you're right. Some of these nurses that were just doing this, they're not going to have that job because now AI is going to be able to do it. The other one was Glass Health. Again, I don't have ownership in any of these two. I just kind of follow this stuff for fun.
Right.
This Glass Health, what they did is exactly what I just said, reinforced learning by doctors. They got to be careful because I feel like some of the stuff that they're starting to do, it's going to require FDA approval because it's going to look more like a medical device, but that's like another podcast that we can have. But what they have done is this example that I gave you earlier for the ER, I can put patient X, Y, and Z in the computer and say, okay, patient came in with this, what is the differential? And it'll give me a differential. And then I can say, okay, they have this disease, and it'll actually give me a treatment plan. And what they're doing is they're getting a group of doctors, and each doctors are reinforcing the model to make sure that differential is correct, that treatment plan is correct. And then they're using, PubMed data and all that to do the reinforcement to make sure that it's data, validated. So it's really interesting stuff.
It really is. And I've always loved the idea of crowdsourced sort of societal driven data and improvement. And I think that's where communities like Merge Medical could come in and be part of, being the trainers of these language models. I wasn't aware that ChatGPT was so specific. You made it clear, like we need one or more healthcare AIs, bots that are trained for specific purposes. Fascinating.
Yeah.
You're saying even different silos within medicine, different.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then I'm gonna geek out with you guys even more. There's this thing called federated learning, and just a fancy term, but basically let's just pretend we are all here in Dallas and we all work in the same field and we all are practicing in 3 different parts here in Dallas. What federated learning is doing is basically we're taking the data out of Dr. Brown, Dr. Cole, Dr. Castro, and we're putting it into the cloud, and then it's training one algorithm. But then when you actually execute the algorithm, it's using the data from every single center. So your center, and my center. That way, as you guys know, no 2 hospitals are the same. The population is different. The payer mix is different. And so even though we're all talking the same language, it's further dissecting it down to your local hospital. And I think that is going to be the future in AI in healthcare. We're going to have these models that are going to be sub topics will be your particular hospital, but then we'll have this larger model that everything is feeding into and analyzing. But then when it comes back down, it's using mainly your data and more specific to your demographics. Really interesting stuff.
Okay, now I got a good one for you. Okay, so sounds like you could use this to improve healthcare. Okay, probably reduce errors. I envision that you could put in, say you have lawsuits and medical errors that don't result in lawsuits, but you take all the errors and feed it into this thing and it gets better, right? It helps you reduce this. Okay. They're going to run into this with autonomous driving cars, but hey, where's the liability?
Oh yeah, I got you.
When this thing messes up, who gets sued and who loses? Is it the company? Does anybody that helped train the large language model have liability? Is it the doctor that's now in charge of 250 patients, right? Where does that go? How does that shake out?
Yeah, I've thought about this question a lot, and my answer, unfortunately, is it goes back to the doctor. Ultimately, the doctor is held responsible for the care for the patient. My bad analogy is you chose to, you guys have heard this from med school. You got to be a doctor, right? Sometimes you get some data that you look at the patient's labs and you're like, this is wrong. Let's redraw that lab. This case can't be right, or else they'd be dead. Same thing with AI. Ultimately, unfortunately, we will be held to the standard of saying, no, you're the doctor, not the AI. And then what's crazy is, we haven't even talked about this, but last year, Scientific America quoted ChatGPT-4 having an IQ of 155. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward, this thing is going to get to an IQ that us three combined won't know if ChatGPT is lying or not. We will not know. It's going to be so far ahead of us that we don't know. And we're still liable for it, and we don't know. So we're going to have to do fact checks on this
thing's
stuff.
Going to pass the Turing test?
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's kind of nauseating, actually.
Yeah.
No, this is happening a lot faster than everybody thinks. I'm sure you're aware. I guess it was yesterday or the day before, Palantir announced this newer type platform where basically people, mom and pop shops, can plug into their data analytics platform, their ontologic platform, right? And there's some speculation that this is even going to be as little as $10 a month. So little small companies, restaurants, or an urgent care that brings in $3 million a year can plug their data in for $10 a month. So what I'm saying is, this is going to become ubiquitous, just like the internet's in every single household now. This is going to be in every single household, every single business, everywhere. Soon.
Oh, yeah. Let me show you some. I have a couple of props here for you. This one is a cool one. I won't turn it on, but it's basically a plushie. It's got ChatGPT-4 in it. Mm-hmm. And I can have a conversation with it. There's a tiny lag, but you can ask it anything that's appropriate. You can't say, hey, build me a bomb. How can I do that? Or, hey, I just killed somebody. How do I get rid of the body? As long as it's normal stuff, you can ask it. Mm-hmm. But my point is, this is my example when I talk to pediatricians, having something like this to talk to our children. How many times have you talked to a 5-year-old and you're like, man, how do I break it down? Well, now AI can break it down for them. Mm-hmm. And how would a child taking your meds if it came from this plushie versus came from me? Mm-hmm. So there's a whole thing with that.
Now, Harvey, hold that back up. I want to ask you a couple questions about it. Now, I want to ask you, is that like basically a cell phone and the thinking is done in the cloud?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not got a little brain in it. It's just basically
not yet.
transceiver.
Not yet. My business partner and I are working on a technology that we would put the brain in this, and then you would not need the internet, and it would just talk to you, and you would be able to ask it anything.
And why would you need that? Unless, of course, maybe you're talking about Africa or places with poor
latency and
latency. I'll tell you two fun things that we've done lately. Like one of them, we cloned our voices. So for over a year now, I've had a podcast that within 5 minutes, I take any blog, I paste it into my SaaS model, and it gives me it does a fake conversation like we're having right here, but it's a fake conversation. It has my business partner's voice, and it's like he and I are talking about this, whatever the blog's about. It creates an image that's generated by AI. It creates a transcript, creates the Spotify and LinkedIn posts of what we would say. And then on top of that, it gives me an MP3 file or audio file, basically, that I could upload to Spotify, all under 5 minutes.
That's crazy.
And it sounds like it's me. Like if you go on the podcast, like, holy cow, it sounds like him. And so there's no lag or nothing. It's really smooth.
We can take our weekends off instead of doing this podcast.
Yeah. And so case in point to Dr. Cole's question, what we're working on is a plushie with Sherlock Holmes on it. And if you like Sherlock Holmes, you can ask it any of its questions of any of the old books. If I wrote a book on how to solve crime using AI. It's the same idea. We're going to probably put some information on crime on it, and then you can ask it about how to solve cold cases, or if you're watching a TV show on blah, 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 and we're going to make it like a detective. And we're going to have a mini brain in it that has a lot of that information. So kind of fun stuff that I'm doing. I'm leveraging, this AI plus what's out there and just having fun, creating different kind of tools out there.
What kind of GPU do you got to, and how many Moore's laws do you got to break to get that to work?
We're not far. No, my business partner and I are going to have a prototype here I have a big talk in May, so I'm going to probably bring it in May.
Well, when you do that, when you complete it, bring it back, and we'll do a little updated on the podcast.
Yeah. No, it's all fun stuff. In fact, I'm looking for investors because this idea that I gave you about this glasses, I could easily create something like this and use it in clinic and load it with the clinical stuff where I could take a picture of the, dermatology disease or whatever. There's just so many medical applications with this that I told my business partner, I was like, man, we should probably go into this industry because there's no one doing it the way I'm foreseeing it could be done.
Yeah, I definitely want to see a system like that where it scans for melanomas and basal cells. There's got to be a huge error in missing that as a human. But I know that this is already being done, right?
Oh yeah. I know in the ER conferences years ago, they had these fun little kiosks that you would walk up and they would, take a picture of whatever, this mole you had or anything. And then it would ask you, is this itch? Is this hurt? Kind of like doctor questions. And at the end, it'd be like, okay, here's your differential diagnosis. And this is possibly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
For legal reasons, again, going back to our Africa example here, there's going to be stuff that we're going to see not happening in the United States. They're going to be like, look, we're going to let this AI go here outside of the United States. And because no dermatologist wants to know that this thing can do their job. No one does.
But you still got to cut it off. And that's why I say, and you said, hey, maybe we do more procedural stuff, but you still got to have somebody take it off and make sure the margins are clean, right?
Exactly. And then to that point, let's have fun with that example. In theory, you could have a robot, because I've seen robots that do dentistry now. You could have a robot that is able to excise that one part. And then you can have the excision taken and having it already in the workflow where the AI is already analyzing that derm tissue to tell you if it's malignant or not, and if it's got good margins without a human even looking at the slides. I mean, that's all here already.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you see happening for patient education?
I love that. I'm so happy you said that, because that's like my song and dance is patient education. Nobody out there, we didn't plan this conversation, but this is his question. So I personally think that the low-hanging fruit is communication. As an ER doctor, I used to work right next to the airport, and literally anyone that got sick that flew into Dallas, I would be the doctor. So literally I'd be getting people from all over the world. And one of the hardest parts was getting the language line to have the right translation for that patient. And so I usually, when I give this talk, is on the discharge portion, I say I can not only translate to their language, but think of this. I'm in Texas. You guys are outside of Texas. But if I was your doctor and I could give, using ChatGPT, giving examples to your sex, ethics, region of the country, and instead of me talking about football is real big here in Texas, but let's just pretend your area's soccer or baseball. Now I can use AI to help me convert my language conversation with you and give you examples that are really take home, that you as a patient are like, man, my doctor rocks. Like, he knew and it was sensitive to my XYZ and gave me examples that made sense. And so I really think one of the low-hanging fruits here is having discharge instructions. One of my favorite things that I do when I give my talk is I go over this slide of cartoons, and I'll give you the skinny. It's a case out of England that they did about a year ago, but the skinny is this. Had a 5-year-old with pediatric asthma, first-time diagnosis. What they did is, the normal discharge instructions, they fed it into ChatGPT. They said, give me the core things that we're trying to teach, and say it was like 5 principles. Then they took those 5 principles, put them into what's now Dolly, created a coloring book, and then now when the child's being discharged, they hand the child a coloring book instead of papers. And now the doctor, the nurse can sit down and color, and now the kid that's 5 can be like, wow, this is using my language. I'm coloring. I get it. I need to take my meds. I get it that I need to tell an adult when I get asthma exacerbation. And so now they're more likely to be compliant with their medications. They're more likely to understand their disease process. And I'm thinking that is the way we need to push healthcare, start using these tools. Last thing I want to say about this topic is there's this thing called Sora that I can just type and it creates a video. I foresee, if I don't do this myself, or someone in the near future, we're going to have a discharge instructions where literally we're like, discharge the patient with this. And now the patient will have a whole animated discharge instruction. So if they can't read, it'll be an animation. If someone that's a millennial or someone younger than us, that they just want to see a 30-second, 1 minute video of what the discharge instruction said, it'll have it. And so my point is, it's going to be a whole different realm now with AI or discharge instructions.
Yeah, and I can see that being an extension to follow-up care as well, where it would free the clinician from or the nurses from follow-up phone calls. I mean, you could have a chat GPT, if you will, call the patient, ask the right questions, know they're easily to train someone to do that. You know, is this occurring? You're urinating, no emesis, etc. in terms the patients understand, right?
Yeah, and then to our point earlier, we talked about Hippocratic AI. You can have a bot take that intake. Did you pee after surgery? Are you having fever? How your suture's doing? And then it's doing all the intake and then sending it to the doctor to review. And then the AI can, in theory, do a prelim and say, yeah, based on what the answers is, this is a low probability of having an issue. And then take it a little bit extra, having the video and allowing the AI to take a video of the wound and blowing it up and being able to look at it and say, no, this is an example of what it is, and have the AI read that X-ray that picture.
It's already being done. And I've got a friend that's a radiologist. He said it helps. It's speeding him up and it helps him. It's not replacing him. And then we actually did a podcast with a group that's got a device that listens to bowel sounds and will predict with astonishingly accurate post-op ileus at hour 12, and it will reduce readmissions by like 41%. It listens to an acoustic biomarker, but they're also developing one that'll listen to, help me out, Jeff Cole, I think it listens to for CHF and asthma, and it's amazing what it will do, right?
Predicting, biomarkers, acoustic biomarkers, predicting these events that are well into the future.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
One of my buddies invented this palpation app that basically is able to determine if you have an acute belly, and you're answering questions. And I believe you put the phone on your belly, and then it's able to know if you're having pain.
Right? Well, you said something that made me think of this. You could tell my hemoglobin A1C. I think everybody's trying to find the perfect way to measure blood sugar, not the average, but the actual blood sugar, because it's actually very difficult from a physics standpoint to measure blood sugar through dry skin, right? So if someone can do that, put it on a watch, man, that's the holy grail, right?
Yeah, I'm working with some companies right now that are basically, and there's already this technology, but they have a patent where they have this little device you hold and it tells you how much water you have. So for your CHF patients, it's really accurate to know, what their fluid is. And then they're adding AI and predictive analytics that they can say, yeah, this patient's about to end up in the hospital, and it automatically notifies the cardiologist to say, okay, we need to up your Lasix, or we need to take a look at you, or change your diet. I'm really big on wearables. And so I think, the information that's coming out of this bad boy is huge. The Apple Watch. And I think soon we'll have an Apple Ring that's coming that they haven't announced. And so big picture, these data points are going to be huge for us physicians, because then we're able to see our patient better. The other cool little toy that they said it was FDA approved, it hasn't come out, is by Whiting. It's this little device that goes in your toilet, and every time you pee or poop, it's analyzing those items and can tell you with about 5,000 different metabolites of what's going on in your body. And I'm like, man, can you imagine that on a dashboard? And it's like, hey, we're seeing precancerous cells, or hey, your CRP is coming up, something's up, you need to go see the doctor in real time. Us doctors will be like, I don't know what's going on with you, but we're gonna have to start looking, because it's such an early alarm. But we're gonna have to look it up.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It really is.
Well, Harvey, I saw that you're involved with Vital Health, Brittany Buss's company. How do you think the future looks there, just for platform that supports a lot of the home monitoring and supports private practice physicians, which we're huge supporters of.
Yeah, I think platforms that are pushing for telemedicine / the different wearables, like you just mentioned, that patients can take advantage of knowing more about their health, and simple stuff like a scale that goes on Wi-Fi that can communicate with your doctor. I mean, that sounds like it's nothing, but it actually could be very helpful. I'm excited to see, the next wave is taking the hospital to your home. I mentioned that metabolite thing that I said that you can use. There's 3D printers in the near future. We could print our own medications. I'm personally excited that I'm working for a company called Help AI, and it does predictive analytics for anyone that's about to fall out of their bed. So it's a monitor that's watching, and it's literally, if the patient's turning side to side, it knows, and it's looking at the patient. And it'll say, yep, even before the patient has even gone out of bed, oh yeah, this patient's about to get out. And so now the doctor, the nurse can be notified. The AI of the instrument can say, hey, Miss Smith, do not get up, in their language. So if they're from another country or something, speaking another language, the AI could speak their language and tell them.
And wait for help to come.
Yeah, and it's called Help AI. So I'm really excited that I'm working. I think we're in 100 beds right now. So I'm really excited just to get the word out and get in front of hospital administrators to do it. I know I'm helping them develop a home edition. And so what we'll have here, my goal is in the next 6 months is, we all have aging parents or family member or friend, have this device in your home. So that way, because as we get older, we don't want to give up our independence. And so having these devices, so that way we can go and say, okay, mom's okay. The AI is literally watching them to make sure that they're not falling. As an ER doctor, I saw so many patients with rhabdo that they were literally laying on the floor. They fallen, they couldn't get up, and they were there 4 or 5 days, and they were literally about to die. And so having this AI help monitor, being able to say, yes, they fell. They are pattern recognition. They usually get coffee at 8. They usually do this at 12, and then all of a sudden they're not getting up. They're not doing this, to set an alarm and say, hey, check on mom. She's going against her pattern and she's not communicating. She hasn't moved. These kind of things I think are going to save lives.
Man, it's fascinating.
Great. Harvey, have you looked at many of the AI transcription companies? And I guess my main question is, it's one thing for just to listen and spit out a note, but have they taken it as far as to be able to hear what are the work items being discussed and even go ahead and push those things into action?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. There's that is the next generation, being able to take that text and then create it into action. There's so many different ways of listening and transcribing conversations. So you have Amazon, they have a product. You have Microsoft that has another one. You have ChatGPT has another one. And so all of these companies are competing literally to just transcribe our voice. And so there's a device that's coming out, and I can't wait to get it. I probably won't get it until May, but it's called the Rabbit. I wish I had one, but it's probably the size of my wallet. And what it can do is I can press a button, talk to it, and say, order me an Uber. And then it will get on my phone, order me an Uber, and the Uber will be here. What I see, what you're just saying is, how nice would it be that it's taking our conversation and then it's creating actions right after it and then executing those actions. I think we're about a year away from starting seeing some products like that.
Won't that just get incorporated into our phones though?
Oh yeah, let's talk about that one. So the Apple phone, the next edition, rumors has it that they will have its own AI. There's different flavors of AI. There's large language models that cannot fit on our computers, they're just so big. And then there's small language models that will fit on our phone. And so what they're working on is putting their own Apple device memory or language models on these things. One of the things as an ER doctor that I see would be nice is, let's put CPR and basic stuff on this. So that way, if you're in the Grand Canyon, don't have Wi-Fi, there's no doctor, you literally can turn on this thing and then the vision can say, okay, you're doing the CPR correctly. No, that doesn't look like it's correct. You're going in the wrong speed. Simple stuff, it'll be on here. So to your point, yes, these things we're going to start having so much. And in the near future, this will be my agent. So for example, if I needed to prepare for this talk, I would just tell it, hey, prepare me for this talk. And then it'll do the research and then put it on my phone and have it ready.
Seems like it would be your secretary. It would be your secretary, your assistant, etc. Right? Well, don't get me wrong. I love Apple, but Siri needs some help.
Well, I think I'm not a betting man because right now I know the Justice Department is going after Apple, but I personally think, and this is just me, not financial advice, I personally think we're going to see a huge upside with Apple here come between a little bit in June and then more September through December when they have these.
I think I must agree because it's like everyone's got an iPhone, right? And it's just a natural progression to make Siri become that assistant, right? And then monetize Siri in some fashion. That's been my prediction as well. Are we saying the same thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I think once we have this large language model and the small language model on these devices, Siri's about to get a huge facelift.
Right.
And it's going to blow people away when they're able to do it. I mean, there's already stuff there's these devices that I can talk to and we'll talk to my computer and send an email on its own, or I could be out visiting you guys and say I forgot a document and then it'll talk to my computer and I don't even have to type anymore. I can just have a conversation with my computer and it get it. My business partner and I are working on several books, and sometimes we use agents that literally go on the internet, find information, go on trusted websites, and then give me the information, and I can look at it and then create either my talk or write another book with it. But it literally, think of it almost like a human being doing the research, but it's literally doing it in real time. So I'm just having fun. Like literally, I'm just doing all this fun stuff. I'm just enjoying it and just creating stuff.
This is awesome.
Are you still working in the ER?
No, I had to give that up. I was managing ERs, and then now sometimes I do a little bit of telemedicine, but right now I'm really just having fun consulting startups, consulting companies, creating products, writing books, giving talks. So I'm pretty busy with just all that stuff.
I can see that. I mean, Jeff Brown and I both live two lives, the clinical life and the entrepreneurial side, but I think we've just got our toe dipped in the water compared to what all you're connected to. So
for sure. Well, Harvey, we've talked about a lot. I do like to give all the guests an opportunity to speak about any topic that we haven't covered that you think is important and relevant to the conversation. And now's that time.
Big picture, I say it's like riding a bike. Some of you guys out there listening, women, I'm from the East Coast. I say guys a lot. You're hesitant of AI, but really instead of being hesitant or scared, just learn it, do it like a bike, just ride it. The more you know, the more you understand. And then I'm going to encourage everybody out there and empower you to be the advocate at your local hospital. And that doesn't mean that you're actually advocating for it, but just understand it. So that way, when a vendor comes and they're trying to sell you some AI widget, you guys know enough as a healthcare professional that's in the front lines to say, you know what, this sounds like a cool toy, but A, we'll never use it, or B, this interface is horrible. We need to not look at this. We need to look at something else. At the end of the day, we all share the common goal of patients. We all want to do whatever's best for our patients, and we love it. We wouldn't be in medicine for the money. We'd be in it because we really enjoy what we do. And so with that said, let's leverage AI and see how can we create a better tomorrow for our patients using AI for our particular vertical. And then the last thing I want to say for me, I really want to encourage people to type in Harvey Castro on LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn, go on Amazon, take a look at some of my books. But more importantly, if you could support me in what I'm doing, there's all these little different AI tools that I'm doing, but it's just me and my business partner, and we're growing, but I need the healthcare professionals to say, you know what, Harvey, I do like X, Y, Z. I do want to support you in this. One of the things that I'm working on with my business partner is a simple tool that would record any lecture, say it's really for medical students. And then by the end of the lecture, it emails the doctor or the medical student a summary of what was said, the key points of what was said, and then it converts it into it's a note taker, but like the new way. So now it's an MP3, and so then now when I have to study for my week exam or month exam, whatever, it takes all those files, puts it together, and says, here's your cheat sheet. Here's how you're going to study for this thing.
So people can focus. So instead of taking turns for note pool, everybody can pay attention, subscribe, and purchase your app, and everybody wins, right?
Well, yeah, we might. I mean, I say might. We would be interested to know what things you're involved in, what things are raising private capital.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'd collaborate.
You're high on, because we plan to put together build a fund over time for the Merge Medical members.
Yeah.
Well, Harvey, we love what you're doing. You check mark all the boxes for us at Merge Medical. We like to have guests that are helping patients, helping physicians, and at least have the potential to enrich our members financially. And you check mark all those boxes. We really enjoyed having you as our guest on the Merge Medical podcast. We'll have you back for an update, and we'll talk offline about investments. I'm your host, Dr. Jeff Brown, with my co-host, Dr. Jeff Cole, and Dr. Harvey Castro. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Harvey.